Adidas didn't just miss Shedeur Sanders, they ghosted him. No texts, no calls, no offers like a bad breakup where one side pretends you don't exist. And Nike? They didn't just show up, they blew the doors off the room, walked straight to the table, and rewrote the rulebook on athlete deals, all before Sanders had even played a single NFL game. This isn't just about football, this is a branding war. And in the opening round, Nike didn't win by a touchdown, they won by season-ending blowout. Picture this. One rookie quarterback, fresh out of college, still learning the playbook, walks into the NFL with more than just a strong arm. He walks in with millions of social media followers, a fully staffed media team, a last name that carries decades of cultural weight, and a strategy so sharp it cut through every outdated marketing plan in the room. By the time his first rookie minicamp was over, Sanders wasn't just Cubone hopeful, he was a cultural icon in the making. The drills and formations were just background noise to the real story, the business machine kicking into overdrive. Nike saw it instantly. The swagger, the presence, the marketability. They didn't just send a contract, they dropped an offer so loaded with game-changing terms that it shook the entire sports endorsement market. We're talking jersey sales hitting $250 million, commission checks in the 8 figures, and here's the kicker, a clause so revolutionary it's now being studied by other athletes like a secret play that could change their careers forever. It's called prime equity, and it flips the traditional rookie deal upside down. No longer just getting paid for touchdowns, Sanders gets paid for being Sanders. Every jersey sold, every documentary streamed, every viral clip, every photo snapped of him stepping off the team bus, all of it puts money directly into his pocket. That's not just a paycheck, that's ownership. Ownership of his image, ownership of his story, ownership of his future. Meanwhile, Adidas, once seen as Nike's fiercest rival in athlete branding, froze. They didn't roll out a campaign, they didn't secure the face of the next generation. Instead, their supposed QB pick, Dylan Gabriel, talented, clean, marketable in the old-school sense, was left with nothing but an empty bag. The message? This era isn't about stats, it's about spectacle. It's not about who throws the most touchdowns, it's about who commands the biggest spotlight. And in that game, Sanders isn't just winning, he's rewriting the scoreboard. Because what happened next didn't just shake the NFL, it sent shockwaves through the entire sports industry. Contracts will change, marketing will change. The way brands look at athletes will never be the same again. This is the Sanders era. And the rest of the league? They're already playing catch-up. Every NFL rookie gets a contract. Some get a little hype. Shedeur Sanders got both, and then turned it into something the league had never seen before. When most rookies walk into minicamp, they're just trying to survive. Learn the plays, avoid rookie mistakes, keep your head down, and prove you belong. For Sanders, minicamp was a formality, a warm-up lap. From the moment he stepped on the practice field, you could tell this was different. The arm talent was there, quick release, tight spirals, reads that looked more like a veteran's than a rookie's. But that wasn't the story. The real story was what he brought with him. Sanders didn't just show up with cleats and a helmet, he showed up with an entire brand. Cameras followed him from the tunnel to the sideline. Photographers captured every moment, not just throws, but smiles, nods, glances. Every angle was calculated, every outfit curated. This wasn't an accident, this was a strategy. See, Shedeur wasn't just walking into the NFL, he was walking into the biggest marketing stage on earth, and he came prepared. Years of college ball under the media spotlight had turned him into more than an athlete. He was already a recognizable figure before he even shook hands with his first pro teammate. The NFL's resource machine, the training facilities, the broadcast deals, the league-wide exposure only amplified what was already there. But here's the key. While other rookies let the league build their image, Sanders walked in with his image already built. He wasn't waiting to be branded, he was bringing his brand to the league. Nike spotted it immediately. They didn't just see a quarterback, they saw a media property. They saw someone whose every move could trend on TikTok, whose name could headline sneaker blogs, whose walk to the locker room could be worth more impressions than an actual game-winning drive. By the time minicamp ended, Sanders wasn't just another name on the Browns roster. He was already making more noise than veterans with 10 years in the league. The media wasn't asking if he'd make the starting lineup, they were asking what he'd wear on game day. That's when Nike made their move. And not just any move, a full-court press. They didn't want to sponsor Shedeur Sanders. They wanted to own the narrative of Shedeur Sanders. They wanted him in every ad, every rollout, every piece of cultural conversation they could dominate. Minicamp ended. His rookie season hadn't even started. And yet, his brand value was already skyrocketing. This wasn't hype, this was infrastructure. A business empire built around a player who hadn't taken a single NFL snap, but who already felt like a veteran of the spotlight. Because Sanders wasn't just a rookie quarterback, he was a rookie icon. Every rookie contract in the NFL has numbers that look exciting on paper: signing bonus, salary, performance incentives. But buried deep in Shedeur Sanders' deal was something no rookie, maybe no player had ever pulled off before. It wasn't just money for playing football, it was ownership. They called it prime equity, a clause so bold, so disruptive, it immediately became the most talked about part of his deal. Here's how it works. Instead of just collecting a paycheck for touchdowns and playoff wins, Sanders gets a percentage of everything tied to his name. Jerseys sold with his number, merchandise with his likeness, media appearances, interviews, documentaries, social media monetization, from viral clips to sponsored posts. Even better, he owns the creative rights to all of it. No league committee telling him what he can or can't do. No sponsor approval required before he posts. Every photo, every video, every behind-the-scenes moment, if it features Shedeur Sanders, he controls it. Think about what that means. A quarterback has always been a team's most visible player, but Sanders isn't just the face of the Cleveland Browns, he's the CEO of his own personal brand empire. Every viral highlight isn't just a stat for the record books, it's revenue. Every time a kid buys a jersey, every time a sports blog reposts a clip, every time a sneakerhead talks about his cleats, Sanders profits. This clause isn't just revolutionary, it's dangerous for the competition, because it shifts the entire power dynamic. For decades, athletes have been the product. They've played for the brand, worn the logo, and followed the marketing plan. Sanders flipped it. Now the brand plays for him. And here's the part that makes it genius. He didn't stumble into this, he planned it. By the time he hit the draft stage, Sanders already had a proven track record as a marketable figure. He'd run his own media channels, cultivated partnerships, and built an audience that followed him as much for his personality as for his play. Nike didn't just sign him, they invested in a fully packaged product that was ready to sell on day one. Adidas? They were rumored to be in the race, but by the time they got their strategy meetings going, it was over. Sanders had already secured the most forward-thinking contract in football history, and while Adidas sat on the sidelines, Nike turned prime equity into the headline deal of the year. This wasn't about being the highest-paid rookie. It was about being the most profitable rookie. And the rest of the league? They'd just been shown the blueprint for the future, a future where a player's name is worth just as much as his arm. The moment Shedeur Sanders walked onto the draft stage, the cameras didn't just see a rookie quarterback, they saw a brand. And not just any brand, a walking, talking, money-printing machine. Rookies usually need years to build that kind of recognition. They grind through practice, prove themselves on the field, and maybe land a shoe deal if they're lucky. Sanders skipped that queue entirely, because by the time he put on the Cleveland Browns cap, his signature was already a marketing weapon. Nike knew this. They'd been watching since his Colorado days, not just the touchdowns, but the persona, the confidence, the fashion, the Instagram-ready moments that went viral before the final whistle. And when the prime equity clause dropped, that's when Nike went all in. Instead of rolling out a generic rookie welcome ad campaign, they staged a brand coronation. Limited edition sneakers with gold accents to match his prime legacy. A commercial narrated by his father, Deion Sanders, that blurred the line between family heritage and brand dominance. Pop-up shops in Cleveland selling not just jerseys but full lifestyle collections, hats, hoodies, even cologne. It wasn't a rookie launch, it was a cultural event. Meanwhile, Adidas fumbled. They'd been circling Sanders like a shark, but when it came time to bite, they hesitated. The moment slipped away, and Nike claimed the kill. By the time Adidas's Boardroom stopped debating, Sanders was already the face of Nike football, with merchandise selling out in hours. Here's the thing. Rookies sell hope, veterans sell proven greatness. Sanders managed to sell both. He was the new kid with a veteran's swagger, and fans couldn't get enough. Every press conference was a soundbite factory. Every game was a runway for his latest cleats. And the real genius? Nike didn't just brand him as a football player, they branded him as a lifestyle. Whether you watched the NFL or not, you knew his name. You saw the ads. You felt the presence. That's when Sanders stopped being just a rookie quarterback. He became a symbol, a statement that the old rules where rookies waited their turn were dead. Kids in high schools across the country started wearing his gear not because they rooted for the Browns, but because they wanted to be part of the prime era. And every sale, every photo, every hashtag, it went right into the bank account of the man who'd negotiated the most forward-thinking rookie contract in history. Sanders didn't just step into the league. He stepped into the boardroom, and from day one, he was running the show. By the time the ink dried on his rookie contract, Shedeur Sanders had already flipped the NFL playbook, not the one on the field, the one in the boardroom. Most rookies come in focused solely on football. They trust their agents to handle endorsements, take whatever deal lands first, and hope that a good season will bring more opportunities. Sanders? He was running 2 seasons at once, one on the gridiron, one in the marketplace. It all started with a blueprint. His camp, led by none other than Deion Primetime Sanders, had watched the NIL, name, image, and likeness, revolution reshape college sports. They knew the NFL was behind the curve, still treating brand deals like dessert instead of the main course. So when Shedeur entered the league, they built his career like a startup launch. Step 1. Secure a foundational brand partner before the first snap. Nike wasn't just a sponsor, they were positioned as his co-architect. The Prime Equity Clause wasn't about free gear, it was about ownership. Profit sharing, creative control over product lines, and a seat at the table when marketing campaigns were designed. That level of leverage is unheard of for a rookie, but Sanders' team treated him less like a first-year QB and more like a celebrity CEO. Step 2. Control the narrative. Every Instagram post, every interview, every sideline camera shot was intentional. Sanders wore Nike in ways that felt natural, not forced pre-game tunnel walks with gold-trimmed cleats, warm-up hoodies that dropped in limited runs the next day, even subtle nods to his dad's iconic 90s looks. The brand wasn't just selling a product, they were selling a storyline. Step 3. Expand beyond football. While rookies traditionally stick to sports-centric endorsements, Sanders' portfolio was diversified from the Jumpman's grooming products, a streetwear collaboration, a crypto startup targeting young investors. This wasn't random hustle. It was ecosystem building. Every brand touchpoint funneled back to the same identity, Shedeur as the face of modern athlete entrepreneurship. Step 4. Leverage scarcity. Nike didn't flood the market with Sanders merch. They released in waves, creating lines that sold out in hours. That scarcity drove resale prices through the roof, which in turn made his products even more desirable. You weren't just buying a jersey, you were buying access to a cultural moment. Step 5. Reinforce the legend on the field. Brand power fades fast without performance to back it up. Sanders understood that highlight plays were currency. Every fourth-quarter comeback, every no-look pass, every mic'd-up sideline moment wasn't just football, it was marketing. The result? By the end of his rookie season, Sanders had done something unheard of. His off-field earnings rivaled his on-field salary, and his name carried as much weight in sneaker culture as it did in NFL locker rooms. He wasn't just a quarterback anymore. He was a brand architect, a cultural disruptor, and proved that the next generation of athletes won't just play the game, they'll own it. By mid-season, it was clear Shedeur Sanders wasn't just playing in the NFL. He was redefining it. Statistically, impressive. Socially, untouchable. Financially, historic. The Prime Equity Clause that raised eyebrows at the draft was now a case study in sports business programs. Analysts were comparing it to LeBron's early Nike deal and even Michael Jordan's original Air Jordan contract. The difference? Sanders had baked in ownership a seat at the table that most athletes never get until the twilight of their careers. And it was paying off. Every time Sanders stepped on the field wearing a new cleat design, it wasn't just a performance moment, it was a product launch. His pre-game outfits, carefully styled down to the accessories, were instantly reposted by fashion blogs and sneaker accounts. When he wore a jacket, sold out in hours. When he wore a beanie, backordered for weeks. Nike's numbers told the story. Sanders' first-year merchandise sales rivaled those of established NFL stars. His rookie jersey? Top 3 in the league. His cleats? A cultural phenomenon. Off the field, Sanders was building his empire like a tech startup. He partnered with content creators to drop exclusive behind-the-scenes footage from the locker room. He invested in emerging streetwear brands, lending his name and visibility in exchange for equity. He appeared in national campaigns not as Shedeur Sanders QB, but as Shedeur Sanders the brand. It wasn't just marketing, it was movement building. Critics who once dismissed him as Dion's son writing the name had to swallow the numbers. Shedeur wasn't just leveraging his father's legacy, he was expanding it. He'd taken the Prime DNA and evolved it for a new generation that lived on TikTok, Instagram, and sneaker drops. And then came the moment that cemented him as a brand icon. During a crucial late-season game, Sanders led a 92-yard game-winning drive under 2 minutes. Cameras caught him afterward, sweat still on his brow, pointing directly into the lens and saying, "This is bigger than football." The clip exploded online. Nike reposted it within minutes, overlaying the slogan, "Own your era." Merchandise with that phrase hit shelves the next morning and sold out in 48 hours. That's when everyone realized Sanders wasn't just an athlete who endorsed products. He was the product, the story, the headline. From rookie to brand icon, Sanders had done in months what most take decades to achieve. He hadn't just joined the league, he'd reshaped how athletes enter it. And the scariest part for his competitors? This was only year one. The season ended, but the noise didn't. In fact, it got louder. Sports talk shows dedicated entire segments to the Sanders effect. Marketing analysts broke down his endorsement to equity ratio like it was a Wall Street IPO. And kids in every corner of America weren't just wearing his jersey, they were mimicking his swagger, his celebrations, even his pregame struts. The NFL had seen rookie sensations before, but never like this. Never one who could dominate and disrupt in equal measure. Shedeur Sanders had cracked a code. Instead of waiting for his career to blossom before stepping into business, he'd entered the league as both quarterback and CEO. Instead of chasing brands, he made brands chase him. Instead of separating his on-field identity from his off-field ventures, he fused them into one seamless package. That fusion was the secret. Every touchdown, every interview, every post-game quote was part of the narrative. And it wasn't accidental, it was orchestrated. Sanders and his team treated his rookie season like a Hollywood production. Storyline arcs, emotional hooks, visual signatures. And the results? They didn't just show up in the stat sheet, they showed up on balance sheets. The Own Your Era campaign became more than a slogan, it became a movement. High school players wore it on hoodies, college athletes quoted it in commitment announcements. Even rival pros acknowledged the genius of what Sanders had built. In the boardrooms of sports agencies and apparel companies, his name was shorthand for the new model. Athlete 3, not just a player, not just a celebrity, a cultural architect. As the offseason approached, speculation swirled. Would Sanders expand into media production? Launch his own fashion line? Drop a signature cleat that rivaled Air Jordans? Insiders hinted at all three. But when asked directly, Sanders smiled that same calm, confident smile that had frustrated defenders all season. "I'm just getting started." That was the thing about Shedeur. Every win, every viral moment, every million-dollar deal still felt like chapter 1 of a much bigger story. The NFL was just the stage he happened to be standing on. The play itself? Much larger. Rookies usually enter the league hoping to fit in. Sanders entered aiming to stand apart, and by the end of the year, the scoreboard read, "Mission accomplished." From a fresh-faced draft pick to the face of a movement, he'd proven that in the modern era, greatness isn't just measured in yards or rings, it's measured in impact. And impact? Sanders had plenty to spare. Because once you've owned your era, the era never forgets your name. The whispers started in training camp. Not from the coaching staff, they already knew what they had, but from veterans, analysts, and even rival defensive coordinators. The kid might already be better than our starter. If he keeps this up, Cubone is just a matter of time. By mid-season, it wasn't whispers anymore. It was a storm. Sanders wasn't just surviving in the NFL. He was thriving. The pocket awareness, the deep ball accuracy, the ability to read defenses like a seasoned veteran, it was all there. But what truly separated him was his poise. Blitz coming? No panic. Third and long? Eyes still downfield. 2 minutes left and the game on the line? That was his favorite scenario. His teammates felt it. You could see it in the huddle, the way receivers leaned in a little closer, the way offensive linemen fought for an extra second of protection, the way the sideline erupted when he made another improbable throw. It was the kind of belief you can't fake. The starters' numbers weren't bad, but football isn't just about stats, it's about command. and Sanders had it. By week 10, the head coach made it official. "Sanders is our starting quarterback," he said at the post-game presser, his tone making it clear this wasn't a temporary decision. And he's earned it. The moment the news broke, the reaction was electric. Social media exploded. Sports shows ran Sanders named Cubone as their lead story. Fans flooded the team store for jerseys with his number. But the promotion wasn't just a title change, it was a responsibility shift. Now, every defensive coordinator in the league had 2 weeks of sleepless nights ahead of them before facing him. Now, the expectations weren't just for flashes of brilliance, they were for consistent excellence. Sanders embraced it. His first game as the official Cubone? A 300-yard, 3-touchdown clinic that ended with him calmly kneeling out the clock while the stadium chanted his name. Behind the scenes, nothing changed. Same early mornings in the film room, same post-practice throwing sessions, same mental notes in his playbook. Sanders understood that becoming Cubone was just the start of a new challenge, one where consistency, leadership, and durability mattered as much as raw talent. By season's end, it was hard to remember there was ever a time he wasn't the starter. His leadership had shifted the team's identity. The offense played faster, the locker room felt tighter, and even the defense fed off the energy. And yet, when asked about the transition, Sanders kept it simple. "Cubone? That's just a number. My job is to win." In a league where rookies often spend years waiting for their moment, Sanders didn't just wait, he took it, and once he had it, he never looked back. By his second season, Sanders wasn't just a promising young quarterback, he was the conversation. Broadcasters couldn't get enough of his highlight reels. Opposing coaches admitted they were reworking defensive schemes just for him. Analysts were no longer comparing him to other young QBs, they were comparing him to legends. What made Sanders different wasn't just his stats, though, they were jaw-dropping. It was the way he played the game. He blurred the line between classic pocket passing and the modern dual-threat style. He could beat you with a pinpoint 40-yard throw or by escaping a collapsing pocket and sprinting for the first down. But every move had purpose. He wasn't flashy for attention, he was surgical for victory. More importantly, Sanders redefined what a quarterback meant to a franchise. He wasn't just the leader of the offense, he was the face of the organization. He didn't wait for the media team to call him for a community event. He called them. He didn't shy away from tough losses. He faced the press with accountability. And he didn't just play the game, he elevated everyone around him. Receivers who had been struggling with drops suddenly looked like Pro Bowlers. Linemen who were often criticized for penalties now played disciplined and united. Even the defense, which had nothing to do with his play calls, fed off the energy he brought. The team felt different with him in charge. Off the field, the impact was just as seismic. Ticket sales broke records. Youth football enrollment in the city skyrocketed, with kids showing up in Sanders jerseys pretending to lead game-winning drives. Local businesses near the stadium saw more game day traffic than ever. In the locker room, veterans whispered something rare in the NFL: "This kid is going to change the game." By the end of that season, Sanders had taken his team deep into the playoffs. They didn't win the championship, not yet, but they had become contenders, and everyone knew it wouldn't be long. League officials noticed too. Sanders' style began influencing playbooks across the NFL. Young QBs entering the league were now being coached to study his footwork, his timing, his decision-making under pressure. Sports media ran features titled The Sanders Effect, exploring how one player's arrival had shifted the game's evolution. And through it all, Sanders stayed grounded. At the post-season press conference, with reporters ready to crown him the future face of the NFL, he simply said, "Change the game? That's for history to decide. I'm just here to win the next one." But for the fans, the teammates, and the kids throwing spirals in their backyards pretending to be him, history had already made up its mind. Sanders hadn't just become Cubone. He had become a blueprint. And in doing so, he didn't just play the game, he changed it forever. Sanders' journey to NFL immortality didn't happen overnight. It was built brick by brick, starting from those first electrifying college games when scouts whispered his name in crowded press boxes. Back then, he wasn't just playing, he was announcing his arrival to the football world with every snap, every throw, every improbable comeback. In college, he'd been a phenom, record-breaking passing yards, clutch plays in the dying seconds, a natural leader in the locker room, the kind of quarterback who made teammates believe in miracles. But the NFL was a different beast, faster, tougher, and utterly unforgiving. Many college superstars had crumbled under its weight. Sanders didn't crumble. He adapted. His rookie season was a proving ground. Defensive veterans tested him with blitzes designed to rattle his nerves. Analysts questioned if his style would hold up in the pros. But each week, he learned. By mid-season, the hesitation was gone. The throws were sharper. The reads quicker. The confidence unshakable. By his second year, Sanders was no longer the rookie. He was the franchise. The face on billboards, the voice in the huddle, the one calling the shots in crunch time, and the wins began piling up. The legend truly took shape in year 3. That season, Sanders orchestrated what fans now call the drive, a 92-yard march downfield in the final 2 minutes against the defending champions. The stadium shook as his final touchdown pass sealed a win that would be replayed for decades. Commentators didn't just call it a great game, they called it a moment in NFL history. Off the field, Sanders understood his platform. He became a vocal advocate for youth sports programs, funding training camps and scholarships for underprivileged kids. He visited schools, reminding young athletes that discipline mattered as much as talent. He knew that the real measure of a legend wasn't just trophies, but the lives you touched along the way. By his 5th season, Sanders' name was etched alongside the all-time greats. MVP awards, Pro Bowl selections, playoff appearances, the accolades kept coming. But ask him, and he'd say the stats were just numbers. For Sanders, the game was about moments, the roar of the crowd after a perfect pass, the tight embrace of a lineman who had just protected him from a crushing sack, the quiet satisfaction of walking off the field knowing he gave everything. When he finally hoisted the Lombardi Trophy, it wasn't just a personal victory, it was the culmination of years of grit, growth, and unrelenting belief. The kid who once lit up college stadiums had become a beacon for an entire league. Sanders' story wasn't just about becoming an NFL star. It was about rewriting what a star could be. From the bright lights of college to the unforgiving grind of the NFL, he didn't just survive, he dominated. And when the history books are written, his name won't be a chapter. It will be the headline. The 2024 season didn't start with fireworks. It started with questions. Could Sanders finally push his team all the way? Could they turn highlight reels into a championship parade? The pressure was unlike anything he'd faced, not just from fans and media, but from himself. From week 1, it was clear. Sanders was locked in. His passes were crisper, his reads sharper, his leadership louder. He wasn't just playing quarterback, he was commanding the game. Every drive was calculated, every audible was precise. And slowly, the wins began stacking up. By mid-season, the team wasn't just winning, they were dominating. Blowouts against rivals, comebacks against top-tier defenses. Sanders seemed untouchable, threading passes through impossibly tight coverage, escaping sacks that should have buried him. The media began to shift their tone. This wasn't just a hot streak, this was destiny. The playoffs brought the real test. Wild card round, a cold, rain-soaked battle where every pass felt like throwing a brick. Sanders stayed calm, leaning on the run game when needed, and hitting short, surgical passes that chipped away at the defense. They advanced. Divisional round. Against the league's #1 defense, Sanders delivered one of the finest performances of his career. Late in the 4th, down by 4, he orchestrated a 78-yard drive capped by a laser to the back of the end zone. The crowd erupted. His teammates mobbed him. The message was clear. Sanders wasn't leaving without the win. Conference championship. This was the game people thought would break him. A hostile stadium, deafening crowd, and a defense built to punish quarterbacks. But Sanders thrived in the chaos. He used the noise as fuel, snapping the ball with a grin on his face, hitting deep shots when the defense least expected it. The final whistle sent them to the Super Bowl. Then came the big one. The Super Bowl wasn't just another game, it was the ultimate test of will, skill, and composure. Cameras followed Sanders from the tunnel to the field, catching the moment he closed his eyes and took a deep breath before kickoff. From the first snap, it was a chess match. Every possession mattered. In the 4th quarter, tied game, 2 minutes left, Sanders took the field. The entire stadium was on edge. This was the moment every kid dreams about. With poise that only comes from years of grind, he marched his team down the field, short passes, clock management, then the dagger, a 27-yard touchdown strike with just 14 seconds remaining. When the confetti fell, Sanders stood at midfield, helmet in hand, tears in his eyes. He had done it, not just for himself, but for every teammate, coach, and fan who believed. The Super Bowl run cemented his legacy. He wasn't just a great quarterback anymore. He was a champion. The final whistle of the Super Bowl was more than the end of a game, it was the end of a journey years in the making. Sanders stood under the falling confetti, surrounded by teammates, photographers, and a roaring crowd. The scoreboard flashed victory, but in his mind, a flood of memories was playing. The grueling practices, the sleepless nights studying film, the moments when people doubted he could lead a team to this very moment. The locker room was electric. Players laughed, cried, and embraced like brothers who had been through a war together. Sanders sat quietly for a moment, helmet at his feet, letting the reality sink in. Reporters swarmed, microphones in hand, but he took a deep breath before speaking. His words weren't boastful, they were humble, filled with gratitude. He thanked his offensive line for protecting him, his receivers for making impossible catches, his coaches for believing in him, and the fans for never letting the fire go out. In the days that followed, the city exploded with celebration. Streets were lined with banners, car horns echoed late into the night, and kids wore Sanders jerseys like a badge of pride. The championship parade was unlike anything the city had ever seen. Sanders rode on the lead float, Lombardi trophy in hand, waving to the sea of supporters who had stood by the team through every high and low. But beneath the celebrations, Sanders knew this moment was also a turning point. Championships change a player. The demands get heavier. The expectations grow. Every future season would now be judged against this gold standard. For Sanders, that wasn't pressure, it was motivation. The off-season brought endless interviews, commercials, and public appearances, but he made sure to carve out time to recharge. He visited his childhood neighborhood, where kids swarmed him for photos and advice. He told them the same thing he had told himself during the toughest stretches of his career: hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Away from the spotlight, Sanders began preparing for the next season almost immediately. In his mind, one championship wasn't enough. He studied film, worked with his receivers in private sessions, and focused on building chemistry with the younger players who would be stepping into bigger roles. He knew the league would come at them harder than ever. Defending a title was often more difficult than winning it the first time. Still, there was a deeper satisfaction that nothing could take away. Sanders had silenced the doubters. He had answered every question about his leadership, toughness, and ability to perform under pressure. He had given his city a memory that would live forever. As the sun set on that off-season, Sanders stood on his porch, holding the Lombardi trophy for one last quiet moment before placing it on the mantle. He smiled, not because the journey was over, but because a new one was about to begin.